Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session. We're so glad that you're here. You're going to get a lot of useful information about education for sustainable development, about how to go and get a green career, about what resources we have for you that you can explore and utilize so that you can be a change maker for a more sustainable future. My name is Deborah Rowe. I'm the president of the U.S. Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development, and I will be speaking in a little bit, but right now we're going to start with Kathleen, and she'll introduce herself and get us going. Kathleen? Yep, you're on mute. There we go.
There we go, Zoom life. Yeah, so thanks to everyone for joining our session. My name is Kathleen. My pronouns are she and her. I have worked at McGill University in their sustainability office from 2003 until 2019. And I am now a senior advisor of strategic initiatives in our university advancement unit. And I'm also a Canadian fellow of the Higher Education Association's Sustainability Consortium with Deb. And it has been a pleasure just working on sustainability throughout the majority of my career and onwards. So I'm here to tell you a little bit today as a mini case study, the sustainability journey at McGill. So this session is really about, providing and empowering change agents with support for their sustainability journey. And the grassroots efforts at McGill have been really instrumental with regards to our sustainability journey. So about McGill, we are a university in Canada, one of the top universities in the world, depending on, which rankings you're referring to. We've been #1 in Canada by Maclean's, for example, for the past 16, 17 years, where we have 3 campuses, and we have research stations across the world. And we are located in beautiful Montreal, Quebec, Canada, on land that has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people. And we honor and recognize and respect these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and waters on which we operate. So going back in history, McGill's sustainability journey started, a long time ago. So imagine the late 90s, the Rio conference in Brazil happened, and then the world is now reckoning that, sustainability is now becoming a problem for the world. So McGill actually joined the Halifax Declaration and the Talwars Declaration in the late 90s. Basically, the university president's principles acknowledging that sustainability was important and that higher education would be engaging its mission to help with this. And for a couple of years, not much happened. And then our students held a beautiful winter camp on campus, basically telling us that our performance was not great. And they were advocating for sustainability policy for the campus. Long story short, we had a multi-stakeholder working group of students, faculty, and staff, ultimately formed under our Senate. And they came up with a sustainability policy for the campus. And then the action plan was developed out of that, and I was actually hired to help implement that action plan with the subcommittee on the environment at the time. So over the years, our activities initially started with very environmental focused things, recycling and energy and water, and then slowly we branched out beyond that. And students have been really instrumental to our change. So it was thanks to students that we implemented a paper use policy, because at the time, we were printing single-sided and they wanted us to use less paper. So the paper use policy was approved after being worked on and led by our students and with a multi-stakeholder team in 2005. And at a certain point, everyone says you run out of money to start doing the stuff that you need to do. So a few students grouped together to develop the framework for the Sustainability Projects Fund. And they had a referendum where they said if we pay a certain amount per credit every semester, and the university would match that dollar for dollar, they would form this amazing new fund where students, faculty, staff on campus could apply to make their ideas happen on campus. So really instrumental and transformative for the campus. And thanks to a landslide referendum, that fee was implemented, and it started out as an 850,000 Canadian dollar fund to which the university community can apply to achieve those things. And now I think it's gone up to, I think, 200, 250 projects that haven't applied, the majority of which, again, are student, faculty, and staff-led projects. So the key takeaways from this is really understanding that you can make a difference. You know, Sustainability Projects Fund has funded a whole bunch of transformative things, including initiatives like an edible campus project, where you have planters that grow edible plants for a local NGO for food security purposes. You know, it has a McGill Feeding McGill initiative, where on our agricultural campus, we have, you know, communities supported agriculture. We have anti-oppression workshops that were funded by the fund. We had Water is Life in outreach campaign that was being run by our Red Path Museum. The first Indigenous Awareness Week was funded by the Sustainability Projects Fund. And I think now, you know, more than 10 years later, that fund has really been instrumental in helping achieve that change. And obviously there's all the research and education work that's being done at the university in parallel. So this is really, really interesting how you bring what we do research in, what we teach, and how we do things in creating, you know, experiential learning opportunities for everyone on campus so that we can learn and grow together. And at the time, we didn't have all these cool tools and resources. And over this time, we have been working with various associations and networks across Quebec, Canada, and the world on developing communities of practice where we can share best practices, what worked, what didn't. And it's really great now, you know, to have, for example, joined the Prime Network for our management school, for McGill to have signed on to HESI, the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, and you know, our sustainability strategies over the past few years in really trying to make this all cohesive and communicate it to the community to encourage us to move forward. And you know, I mentioned earlier, for example, the rankings, that has been, again, something that has developed over the past few years. So we developed some kind of framework with the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative so that students, faculty, staff, communicators, marketers can really dig through those rankings. You know, there's a lot of sustainability rankings to see and better understand how they were formed or inform how they were formed, you know, just so that you can see as you're looking through various universities, if you're looking for experiential learning or research or education, really looking through and understanding what goes into that secret sauce. And that way you can determine, you know, where you want to go with regards to directing your initiatives or your requests or your experiential learning opportunities. So that's been really great. And you know, you can find more about Prime, about HESI, about the various networks who form part of these groups on the websites, which is current. The official HESI website is currently going to be updated, so I can't give you a link just yet. You can just run a Google search for UN HESI at the moment, and looking forward to sharing the new guide, for example, on rankings and assessments with you, as well as the various other resources that HESI and its networks have put together to help empower change makers like yourselves to move forward on your sustainability journeys. So my colleagues here are going to talk a little bit more about that. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Thanks.
Great. Kathleen, thank you so much. Telling that story of how it can evolve and how we can get from just individual passion to systems change so that we can get the sustainable future that we all need. So next we're going to go to Meredith, and she's going to tell you more about the Higher Ed Sustainability Initiative and how you can learn from that and use those resources plus more. Meredith?
Thank you very much, Deb. I'm going to begin sharing screen myself. Hopefully you can see my slides in just one moment. But before I begin giving any sort of, Before I begin giving any sort of formal presentation here, I would just like to kind of tag back to my connection with HESI and how I came to learn about it from the start. My name is Meredith Story. My pronouns are she and her. I am a former PhD student at the University of Limerick, which is a Prime signatory. And it was through that connection that I came to be one of the staffers at Prime back in 2015 when the Sustainable Development Goals were launched. And it was during that period that I really got to learn a lot about Prime. I really got to learn about Prime's interconnected nature with all of the higher education initiatives, all of the supporting organizations, all of the little pieces that do make up the very robust network of Prime in the business school community. To go a step beyond that network, which is the Prime network of mostly universities, you'd see HESI, which is a very robust network of networks. So there's a lot of connection with the UN, there's a lot of connection with international NGOs and supporting organizations, other higher education institutes and higher education supporting institutes. So it's a very robust, what you would kind of think of as a network of networks working together for what we can do together that we can't just do by ourselves. So I became familiar with HESI in 2015 ahead of the SDGs launching and also ahead of COP21, where HESI had put forward a list of universities contributing to COP21 initiatives, even starring out which of those were Prime institutions. So there's always been a very robust and healthy relationship between these two organizations, a lot of collaboration amongst the members. And it's really great to be speaking to you today and to be spreading those words about all that HESI can do with the help of the Prime network. So to begin, just what is HESI? You can read it here. This is taken straight from that website that Kathleen touched upon. But it's the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, which was created in 2012 in the run-up to Rio. These are taking in commitments from universities around the world, and these are commitments that are still relevant today. We're cleaning up the website, so we're learning a lot about the different needs and the different commitments that have been made by our university partners. But the fact is that just like you signed on to Prime for this commitment to greater business and management development, these universities signed on to be part of this coalition for deeper development to higher education and to the Sustainable Development Goals and beyond. So like I said, there's a very strong tie to the UN. You'd see a number of member states represented and, organs represented, more to say. And I'll get to the members in just a bit, but to say that we're involved in higher education, science, policymaking, and bringing all of those together to find synergies. One second with my slides. Some of the present work and the next steps that we're doing right now, just to kind of give an overview of the footprint of HESI. So we often address the high-level political forum as a unit, as the HESI team, but then we also have a number of events that strive off of that are reflective of member initiatives going forward. The HESI website is constantly being updated so that we can have a better platform to speak with you all moving forward. But what I would really like to draw your attention to is 3 of the biggest initiatives that we're working on. And those are things that are being done in collaboration with other members of the HESI network that we couldn't necessarily, again, achieve on our own. So one of the biggest ones is a mapping initiative that's actually been really driven by Deb on this call and others here, mapping the UN landscape, identifying overlaps, synergies, and future works, not just with the UN organs, but in all sorts of work that promotes the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is about seeing how these can relate back to higher education members, how they can relate to our own organizations and beyond, so that we're not replicating work, we're not duplicating work, we're really seeing those tension points where we can come together to move forward together. Another good example here is rankings and assessment work. Kathleen had touched on that a little bit in the previous discussion, but discussing how we can work together and move together to identify some of the biggest blockades that there are in the higher education for sustainable development world, being in touch with the rankings and assessment groups, reaching out exactly to those people who are the change makers and the deciders there. And also we work a lot on climate change commitments. There's a co-chair representing HESI that is a UNEP member, head of youth, and also a very large mandate from the HESI founding documents to align clearly with developmental action and next steps for addressing climate change. So this is something that's truly important and embedded across the network and within each of the member organizations. There's, of course, always ongoing work and projects, some of those that you'd probably be familiar with already as Prime members. But the CELI test was one of the very initial initiatives that came out of the HESI launch, and it's doing quite well now. Additionally, there's the Green Gown Awards, which will be announced with their 2021 winners after the high-level political forum event for HESI in July. There's always new and emerging work as well. I won't touch on that as much now as it continues to grow and develop, but it's always in the process. So just to touch again on who we are, I have a more comprehensive list right after this slide, but brand awareness and seeing these logos, I thought it might be a bit helpful. These are probably stakeholders that you're already working with or striving to work with yourself. Of course, so many of these are large players in the game. You see ASHI's name, you see AUF, the Globally Responsible Leadership Initiative, UNESCO, like the list goes on, but we have so many active and interested representatives that come to us through these already well-developed networks themselves, that it creates a lot of synergy and a lot of movement forward to really push the dial. So here's a full and more comprehensive list of our members, just in case the logos weren't too helpful. But again, to tie back to the history of Prime and the history of HESI, you'll see that some of the events that are listed here, these are all the previous events that HESI has had leading up throughout the years and in contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals. But a lot of these were done in tandem with the Prime Global Forum that you're attending now. Back when they were in person, you just hop on the subway and get down there and time to see HESI present there. So this has always been a very nice relationship here, and it's a shame that we can't be doing more this year, but it's great to be talking to you. And just to touch on one last slide before I go, for future work, sorry, I'm having a bit of technical difficulty here. So future work. I might escape for a second. Yes, here we go for 2021 events, if you don't mind me keeping the screen small. We will, as I said, have a presence at the high-level political forum this year, trying to bring together stakeholders to move beyond the COVID dialogue that we had last year to talk about next steps for a sustainable future. We are constantly having quarterly check-ins with all of the members. And another big event that we'll be hosting this year is, of course, COP26 events and a continuing relationship with UNESCO events, particularly the May conference in Berlin, where there was a large presence as well. So just to say, HESI is here. HESI has always been a wonderful network with Prime. We've always flourished from that development, and I hope to hear from you more soon, and I'm happy to answer questions in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a great overview. We really appreciate it. Please do put your questions into the chat. We do want to respond to you, and if you've got some great resources that you want to share as well, we want to pick those up. I'm going to go next. And what I am going to share with you, as soon as I get to it here, is a few topics that I think will be of great interest to you. So this is about how do we become change agents, right? And how do we help our students do that as well? We're also going to cover in this section green careers and also how to increase sustainable development research and improve our capacity in higher education to help do the real world problem solving and projects that we all need. So let's get started. So look, the essential instructional approach when we teach about sustainable development is to help our students become engaged as effective change agents to create a sustainable future. It's key that we don't doom and gloom them with this information, but instead we inspire them. We engage them in solutions, not just in the problems. We give them a chance to try out working on solutions and learning how they have to be persistent, and they need to understand that it won't always work the first time around, and how they need to understand the informal and formal power structure and build coalitions of support and find the leverage points for systemic change. So as we're teaching our content, we also have to teach the mindset of being a change agent. And in our universities, on our campuses, we need to see it as a living lab and open it up to the public so that they can use the examples that we're doing in their communities and the cities and the rural areas so that we can build more sustainability for all. We also have to help people move from apathy or fearfulness or just being obedient to authority to a caring and effective involvement. with a healthy self-concept of I am a change agent for a sustainable future, and with the emotional and interpersonal skills that they need to make that happen. So sustainability literacy and engagement in the solutions is important for all students, especially for all business students and management students, but really for all students. It is part of the 21st century core competencies that we need in all jobs and also in our roles as community members, as consumers, as investors. Yes. So we can do this. There's rich literature already on what are the key competencies that we need to teach along with the content about our sustainability challenges and the potential solutions. That SULI test that Meredith mentioned stands for Sustainability Literacy Test, and it has questions internationally and from individual countries that help students understand these items of our challenges, potential solutions, and the mindset we need to be a sustainability change agent. So from the literature, we have identified 6 competencies that when you're teaching education for sustainable development, or students, when you're learning it, you also want to learn how to be a systems thinker. You want to learn how to project into what the positive scenarios are for the future. We want to understand our values and how do we shift societal norms so that we get to the values of sustainability. And then, like I said, the strategic thinking and the interpersonal skills and the problem-solving skills to build the solutions. So there's great resources on that. I list them here, but don't worry. There's a resource document that you'll see in the last slide that lists all of them. There is a learning community that we hold. We have multiple learning communities actually out of HESI, where you can come to events and talk to others in universities around the world to learn how to do this. And we also are open for those who are teaching younger people too. We've learned that if you're going to create change agents, you've got to do 3 things in your assignments. Number 1, you've got to, and it's listed here under the second item, key components of quality sustainability assignments. You have to promote understanding without doom and gloom. You have to focus on solutions. Number 2, you have to empower students to make positive change. We do not need to graduate more armchair pontificators. We need people who actually can go out and work on these projects. And number 3, students need to practice being change makers during their academic experiences for sustainable development. So the websites that are linked here are all come from 45 academic societies that came together with STEM disciplines, but also the social sciences and the arts and humanities, and said, okay, let's use sustainability to improve student learning overall, but also to empower students to engage in the solutions. So great resources there. EPIC-N, if your university isn't already connected to it, I recommend that you do. They help you connect with your local communities, regional areas, sometimes national, sometimes international, so that your students have great projects to work on. You know, instead of a research paper, if it's just going to be graded and handed back, it's not going to be published and shared with the world, have them work on a real world project instead, where they can come back and reflect on the learnings that they made about how do you create changes for a sustainable future. And then we also have beyond doom and gloom, climate solutions. We have engagement of students in policy. So we work with Teach for the Future. This is an international student-led coalition that is saying to educators, you've got to teach us about climate change and you've got to engage us in solutions because that's what we need now. We've worked with Fridays for the Future and with the Sustainability Policy Partners Network, helping students to not just vote when they can vote, but to engage with policymakers so that we get what we need in terms of the regulations and the policies for a sustainable future. So those are 2 great resources for you. But we've got to move beyond getting it into courses and co-curricular activities. We've got to institutionalize sustainability. And that means getting it into our strategic plans, in our budgets, and departmental plans, into job descriptions, one of my favorites. Get into the job descriptions and the annual performance reviews. Also in our community partnerships, which we have here as external stakeholder relations. in culture and vision of our leaders, and in how we promote people in our development office. So I haven't named them all, but you can see there's many places where sustainability belongs in an institution. By the way, we have free professional development resources that we can give you that you can use with faculty on how to integrate it into their courses, that even the ones who are resistant. It's fun, it's engaging. With the co-curricular staff, how do you get it into student life, student activities, community partnerships, and into all these other areas of the institution. So please reach out if you want those professional development materials. We also have this wonderful Sustainable Development Goals Publishers Compact that was created with the International Association of Publishers and with people who run the UN publishing office. And now HESI has joined with them to let's get our research more relevant to our urgent sustainability challenges. When a reviewer looks at an article, let's have a standard question be, how does this relate to the Sustainable Development Goals? Include that in your article so that journals start to make more valuable contributions and also connections to the contributions they're already making that are related to Sustainable Development Goals. So a lot of potential there, a lot of excitement about what's coming next, educating the reviewers, educating the editors. And if you're involved in that arena and you want to learn more, then reach out to HESI as well. Here's a last very big piece. We've got 9 years left to reduce our greenhouse gases by 50%. And we don't have any choice. We stabilize climate or there will be unnecessary suffering of billions of people. So we have to take bold actions to handle climate now. And if you find that you're complacent in your jobs or as students, you're just following what the teachers tell you to do, rethink, because all of us have the opportunity to be involved in these bold solutions for climate. And it's exciting to be a part of it. I work with students all over the world. We have a campaign called Change the Chamber Lobby for Climate. You can see it at changethechamber.org or look up Teach the Future. When you're part of the solutions, you feel better about what's going on in the world. And you also learn the skills to be a lifelong change agent. So at UNEP, YAY, which is one of the groups in HESI, we created a global guidance document for education for green jobs. Universities have a very important role to play, and they haven't necessarily stepped up fully to the plate on that. So that's a great document. It took us 9 months of gathering everything that was out there that we could find. Multiple UN agencies gave input. And so you can look it up. Just look it up under UNEP and green jobs. And it will come up the page and you can go and look at that global guidance document. Please use it to transform your institutions. There's also in there other resources. This is just a taste of it. A green genome framework where you can do a self-assessment as an institution, a great document for the TVET institutions. Now, for getting a job, it's very important that you help our students see how to get a green career, a green job, or a sustainability job. Because a lot of students think just in terms of number one, apply for the existing jobs. That's okay, but we need two other approaches to green careers and green jobs. And that is bring a green lens and a sustainability lens to all positions so that students can take any job and be an intrapreneur, a change agent from within to help shift that organization. And third, there's all sorts of jobs that don't exist yet that we need. Do you remember energy managers? You all know what an energy manager is, right? Nice position, they get good pay. Well, they didn't exist when I started this career. And people walked into building owners and said, pay me a portion of what I can save you on your energy bill, or pay me this salary. And if I don't save you at least this much, I'll pay back the difference. And built a position that's now the norm to have an energy manager that didn't exist before. Well, there's all sorts of positions like that that we need for a sustainable future. And so help your students, get those career advising materials in. I wrote an article about it. It's got a listing of dozens of websites where they can get more information. But this is something where we need to fill in a gap for students because so many of them want to work in this area. Okay, so we have a resource doc. You can see it here and it gets you to all the resources that we had on the slides. And we will take that resource doc and we'll put it into the chat during the session here so you have access to it. So thank you for listening. I want to tell you about two more things before I go real quick. I know a lot of students want to find real world projects to work on, and so do faculty for their students. This is a website that does that for you. It's called projectsthatmatter.org. It connects practitioners, faculty, students, and volunteers, if you're interested in doing it as a volunteer, on real world projects for the Sustainable Development Goals. And you can get involved across the world because there's all sorts of remote projects too. So researchers and practitioners, register your projects. Sustainability practitioners, there are thousands of programs and degrees now where students are looking for real world problem solving, and they can help with planning and implementation and evaluation and marketing and distribution and leveraging up what you're doing and getting it done faster and with more quality. So use this website, projectsthatmatter.org, register your projects, and then students and faculty, volunteers, go in and find your projects. It's easy to use. You can just look through all the different projects, use it for thesis, capstone, course assignment, independent study, or just because you have the joy of it being part of the solutions. Find the projects, post the projects, and connect. There's another website that's just like this, that's from the UK, and that website is Nus For Good. We'll put these links in the chat as well. And it's the same kind of a setup. You can search for real world projects, you can post an opportunity, and it connects you so you can do research for good, projects for good, and placements for good. There's the website, but once again, we'll put it in the chat. Thank you. And now I'm going to stop sharing and move to Samach. So Samach really is going to drive down into the details for us of the wonderful world of the clean energy transition. And I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. So let me just start sharing my slides. Okay. So thank you, Deborah. My name is Samach Al-Said, and I work on renewable energy education at the International Renewable Energy Agency. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with IRENA, we're an intergovernmental organization that supports countries in their transition to a sustainable energy future. And so today I really want to talk to you about the need to integrate renewable energy into management education and the role of management professionals in the energy transition. And I think there's this prevailing myth that the energy sector is the purview of engineers. And so I really just hope to highlight this real need for management, business, and finance professionals in the sector. So I think the first point we really need to note is that renewable energy is no longer an alternative energy source. So over years, renewables generation has grown increasingly cost competitive, and in many contexts, they're actually less costly than fossil fuels and nuclear. And this chart here shows the new power capacity additions each year. And the blue bar shows renewable additions, and the gray bar, the non-renewable additions. And you can see that, in fact, last year, renewable energy accounted for 82% of capacity expansion. And quite often you still hear renewable energy being referred to as, the alternative energy, and it's really not anymore. We can see that not only is it the energy source of the future, but increasingly also of the present. And so this growth is reflected directly when it comes to job creation in the renewable energy sector. So IRENA's annual jobs review estimates that in 2019, at least 11.5 million people held jobs in renewable energy. And so this is up from 7.3 million in 2012. And some renewable energy technologies have been more dynamic than others. So the solar PV industry in particular has grown strongly and holds the top spot with 3.8 million jobs and about 33% of the total workforce. And so while, there is quite a lot in the way of positive news, unfortunately, the sector is still, a bit of a man's world. And at present, women hold no more than 1/3 of total renewable energy jobs, according to a survey that IRENA did recently. And when it comes to wind, this number is even worse. So women hold about 21% of jobs in the wind sector, which is quite similar to the share in the oil and gas industry. And so we know there's still a lot that needs to be done to achieve a better energy balance, including ensuring that women are well represented in leadership and in management roles in the sector. Okay, so I've talked quite a bit so far about the current status of the sector, but what about the future? Well, with the right investments and policies in place, by 2050, we could create 78 million energy transition jobs. So about 42 million in renewable energy, another 21.3 million in energy efficiency, and another 14.5 million in energy flexibility. And by contrast, fossil fuels would employ only about 22 million people in 2050. Okay, so what does all of this mean when it comes to management education? Well, quite often when we talk about the need for energy professionals, the focus tends to be on the STEM occupations, so the engineers, the scientists, the technicians. But when you look at job creation along the value chain, so from project planning and procurement, all the way up to operations and maintenance and decommissioning, you can see that we need people with a whole range of skills to be able to deploy the full supply chain. And Irene actually published a series of reports on leveraging local capacities, and there you can see the exact numbers of jobs created and the specific occupations at each point along the value chain. But I think the thing that we really need to highlight is there are also a number of support services and enabling functions that you can see here on this slide. And these are necessary all along the way. And so we need people from many different disciplines, including management, including business and finance, administration, law, to all be knowledgeable in renewable energy. And so this means we need to integrate renewables into many different disciplines, and we need to make sure that careers advisors are also aware of all of the different opportunities that are available in the sector now and will be available in the future. And specifically, when we talk about, innovation and some of the remaining challenges that need to be addressed to make the energy transition happen, there really is a need for innovation. And yes, technology innovation does have an important role to play, but we also need innovation in terms of business models that successfully create the business case for new energy services by expanding consumer choices and boosting the availability of renewable power. We also need innovations in terms of market design, so models that can stimulate, new business opportunities while encouraging power system flexibility. And, these types of innovations are not going to come from the engineers, right? So they're going to come from the management professionals, they're going to come from the business professionals. So we need to make sure that they really have a solid understanding and the skills and the knowledge that's really necessary to make these innovations happen and to succeed in this area. And, the same is true again when it comes to implementing some of the broader measures that are required for a structural shift in the energy sector. We need people in governments, in the private sector, and civil society who are all educated about renewables, who are aware of the measures that need to be taken. And so again, management education has a really important role to play here in terms of making sure that, we're able to influence the decision makers of the future. So just to conclude, I really want to highlight the fact that we need education and skilling policies and programs, not only for, preparing this energy transition workforce, the 78 million workers that I mentioned earlier, but also to make sure that our managers, our innovators, our decision makers are able to develop the new models and policies we need to enable the transition. And the changes we need are going to come from, the future professionals who are skilled, who are entrepreneurial, who are innovative, and who are problem solvers. So I just want to point out that all of the resources and publications that I mentioned earlier are all freely accessible to download on the IRENA website. So I encourage you to do that and to take a look. And I also want to let you know, if this topic is of interest to you, and I really hope that it is, But Irina, the Green Learning Network, REN21, and UNEP's Youth and Education Alliance are going to be holding a joint webinar on energy for the education for the energy transition. And so we're going to have a number of different panelists, from institutions all around the world, including the US, Kenya, the UK, and Germany. And we're really going to share some of these practical, innovative approaches to integrating renewable energy into educational programs. And so this is going to take place on June 30th. We'll put the link to the registration page in the chat. And I really encourage you to attend, and I hope we'll see you there. Thank you very much. Back to you, Deborah.
That was wonderful. It's such a joy to work with you, all of you, and to see the opportunities that are out there. So now, we've got a couple minutes. Put your questions into the chat. We'll work to answer them. If we don't get to all of them right now, we'll come back and continue to answer the questions in the chat. And I just want to thank you, all of you who are participating today, for everything that you have done to move past feeling overwhelmed about our sustainability challenges, to dig into the solutions, and to be part of a brighter future for all of us. So thank you for what you've done in the past, but even more so, thank you for what you're going to do in the future.